Day 95.1 FM, Fort Harcourt. News.
Hello and good evening. This is the World News on your premium talk radio Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt. I am Faustina Oputu. And the headlines: Rivers State Government reaffirms commitment to timely completion of health projects. Pharmacy Council of Nigeria shuts down 618 drug outlets in Rivers and Bayelsa over illegal operations. President Tinubu appoints Babangida's son as chairman of revamped Bank of Agriculture. On the foreign scene, court orders Brazil's former president to wear monitoring device. Details in a moment. And now the details of the news. The Rivers State Government has assured that ongoing rehabilitation and construction of health facilities across the state will be completed in the coming weeks. The Senior Special Assistant to the Sole Administrator on Health, Professor Chituru Oluwene, gave the assurance while addressing newsmen after a 4-day inspection tour of various zonal and general hospitals under construction across the state's 3 senatorial districts. Professor Oluwene stated that the sole administrator, Ibogete Ibas, remains fully committed to revitalizing the health sector to ensure all public health facilities operate at optimal capacity. He explained that his first assignment upon appointment by the sole administrator was to assess the level of work done at the various sites and report his findings, with the aim of helping the administration prioritize what can be completed within the available time.
Cardinal pillars in terms of deliverables of the administration of Sasumare Fubara, and indeed this present interim administration is to ensure that the health sector comes back on board fully in the state. The administrator of the state, Vice Admiral retired, Ibokete Ibas, is committed to the health sector of the state to ensure that the health facilities that are in the state function optimally.
Professor Oluwene noted that only a few contractors have so far met the expected performance standards. He listed the facilities visited during the inspection to include Degema General Hospital, Rumigbo New General Hospital and Psychiatric Hospital, Ahoda Zonal Hospital, Omoko Zonal Hospital, and Boni Zonal Hospital, all of which are still under construction but actively progressing.
Ensure that the intention of government in the health sector is achieved. So that is what we have seen so far. Some of the contractors, if very few of them, have done very well. They have actually lived up to expectation. Then the other project sites we visited, Degema, we visited the Neuropsychiatric Hospital. When we go, at that site, we also have the new General Hospital.
The Pharmacy Council of Nigeria, PCN, has sealed a total of 618 pharmacies and patent medicine stores in Rivers and Bayelsa states as part of its ongoing enforcement drive to regulate pharmacy practice and ensure public safety. The council said the affected premises were shut down for various violations, including operating without valid licenses, failure to renew premises registration, engaging in unauthorized clinical activities, illegal access to controlled medicines, overstocking beyond the approved patent medicine list, training of unqualified apprentices, and retailing drugs from wholesale outlets, practices it described as unethical and unacceptable. Speaking at a media briefing in Port Harcourt, the PCN's National Head of Enforcement, Suleiman Chiroma, disclosed that the operation covered 4 local government areas in Rivers State, Port Harcourt, Obiakpo, Ikwere and Eche, as well as in Egua and Southern Ijaw LGAs in Bayelsa State. According to Chiroma, a total of 867 premises were inspected during the exercise and 5 persons were arrested for breaking the PCN seal.
The pharmaceutical landscape in Nigeria has been bedeviled with chaotic drug distribution, unlicensed or illegal premises, handling of medicines by unauthorized persons, among others. To ensure adherence to minimum minimum standard for quality assurance as enshrined in the PCN Act and relevant regulations and guidelines. A total of 867 premises were visited in both Rivers and Bayelsa states, comprising of 344 pharmacies and 523 patent medicine stores. A total of 618 premises were sealed in both states, which comprised of 178 pharmacies, 123 patent medicine shops, and 317 illegal shops for various offences, while 9 premises were issued compliance directive.
Chiroma further noted that many of the affected operators had made payments for registration but failed to complete the process, yet falsely claimed to be duly registered with the council. The PCN urged residents of Rivers and Bayelsa states to be vigilant about where they purchase their medications and advised the public to report suspicious drug vendors to the PCN offices in their respective states.
One worrisome trend observed during the exercise in Rivers is the unfettered access to controlled medicines in poison cupboard by non-pharmacist staff in pharmacies. This practice is highly unethical and unacceptable, and such allow medicine to get into the hands of unauthorized persons for abuse, which poses a security risk to the general public. It was also observed that many premises owners just made payments without completing the registration process and claimed to be registered. However, there is a need for every pharmacist or vendor to complete the registration process. The PCN is calling on the good people of Bayelsa and Rivers State to be mindful of where they access their medicines and to report such persons to PCN office in their respective states.
Stakeholders from across the Niger Delta converged in Port Harcourt to assess the 2 years of President Bola Tinubu's administration, focusing on his impact in the region. Speaking at the event, convener of the Niger Delta Progressive Alliance, Nse Victor Udo, stressed the need for the region to move beyond agitation as the sole pathway to development, but rather shift towards strategy, scholarship, solidarity, and sustained stewardship. Victor Udo emphasized that for people to make meaningful progress, they must envision the future through understanding of their history, stating that the Tinubu administration has already shown early signs of commitment to genuine environmental recovery in the Niger Delta. Delivering his address on the theme, "The Future is Here," Victor Udo noted a positive shift in approach from military deployments to intellectual engagement and infrastructural development as he encouraged the people of the region to be bold in their decisions, remain united, and focus on building a legacy future generations would be proud of.
We have our son as the president of the Senate. We have one of our sons for the first time in the history of Nigeria to champion the affairs of the FCT. We have our son for the first time to look at the aviation sector. We have our sons in strategic places. The future is here. How do we connect to stop just peace building and begin the economic building of the Niger Delta? It is in that light that I said the Petroleum Industry Act that gives 3% to host communities are beautiful, but to what extent will these host communities be able to transform our lives with this 3%? As community people, how will we mobilize ourselves to making sure that these resources do not become a mere access?
In their remarks, some traditional rulers, including His Royal Highness Bersipere Wilfred Yaye of Burkiri and King Abiye Bright of Okrika Plantation in Iche local government area, commended the organizers of the event and acknowledged the peace currently being enjoyed in the region. However, they called on President Tinubu to increase his administration's efforts towards further developing the Niger Delta.
So youth initiators, I have to give you people special kudos for what you have done. I will also encourage you people, urge you people to go with this ideology, innovations, and all that it takes.
I was on air when this is happening. Nobody went on air. All our things, because they are giving recognition certificate, they don't want to talk again. But I will continue to talk. Do not remove our job governor. And he intervened and entered into Papa and Pikin Wahala and solved that problem. May God bless himself and the FCT minister who accepted the peace. God bless all of them. They will begin to make money from the little phone you have. It's not just for phone calling. I don't want to say much because already the people organizing this thing, they know what to do. But take it serious. Take it what? Serious.
Moving on, the paramount ruler of Ataba Kingdom in Andoni local government area of Rivers State, His Royal Majesty King Benson Mbowaji Gwenre, has called for the creation of Obolo State to enhance the development of the Obolo ethnic nationality and the ongoing constitutional review process. King Mbowaji Gwenre made the call during a sensitization event in Ataba Kingdom, stressing that the oil-rich Obolo region, spanning parts of Rivers and Akwa Ibom states, deserves accelerated economic growth through the creation of a separate state. He also urged that Ataba Kingdom be considered for elevation to a local government area carved out of the existing Andoni LGA.
Ibenon has a lot of oil, Mbu has a lot of oil, and those are the local government areas that are producing crude oil that is sustaining not only Akwa Ibom State, but the entire Nigeria. But what are we getting for it? And so we feel that God, who put us where we are, knew why He did so. God, who also put the resources that we find on our land, knew why He did so. So why would other people come to carry our resources away and will not come back to remember that where the resources are coming from? People are also sitting down there. A lot of marginalized, anywhere in the Andoni, the Ogolo is found. And we come to say this is an opportunity that God has given us for us to come out and make our demand for the creation of Ogolo.
The people of Woji in Obiakwa local government area of Rivers State have dismissed allegations circulating on social media against the Divisional Police Officer, DPO, of the Woji Police Station, CSP Peace Ibekwe, describing them as false and malicious. The community described the report as a sponsored campaign not only aimed at tarnishing the image of CSP Ibekwe, but also as a deliberate attempt to disrupt the peace she has worked tirelessly to maintain in the community. Speaking on the matter, the Eziohevo III of Evo Kingdom, His Majesty Leslie Eke, commended CSP Ibekwe's commitment to fighting crime, de-escalating conflicts and reinforcing the peacekeeping role of law enforcement in the area. The Woji monarch further stated that those calling for her removal are individuals opposed to the peace and stability the community currently enjoys, just as he emphasized that a positive impact is felt not only among residents, but also by local business owners.
Well, I just have to say that Woji is peaceful, and the DPO is there for everyone except criminals and those with dubious characters.
Also speaking, a resident of Woji recalled how CSP Ibekwe played a pivotal role in suppressing tension at the Woji market some months ago, restoring calm and order to the area. He called on those attempting to tarnish her image to desist, urging them to instead channel any concerns to the appropriate authorities.
Woji has been peaceful under the watch of DPO Peace, and the people who are calling for her removal are people who she's not doing their bidding to certify their own wicked intentions towards other innocent citizens and residents of Woji community. She doesn't want to entertain their evil request, turn real security informations against natives and even so many non-indigenous of Woji. That is the reason why they want her removed, because she's not involving herself in crime.
You're listening to the World News on Today 95.1 FM, Voice of the People. After the break, more news, foreign and sports stories. Do stay tuned.
Every day, every hour, when the big stories break, depend on our 24-hour news team to bring you the latest. Today 95.1 FM.
Thanks for staying tuned. Welcome back to the rest of the stories. President Bola Tinubu has appointed Muhammad Babangida, son of a former military dictator Ibrahim Babangida, as chairman of the revamped Bank of Agriculture. This was disclosed in a statement by the President's Special Advisor on Information and Strategy, Bayo Nanuga. 53-year-old Babangida holds a degree in business administration and a master's in public relations and business communication from the European University in Switzerland. He also completed an executive program on corporate governance at Harvard Business School in 2002. The statement also announced the appointments of several other individuals to leadership roles in federal agencies. former chief of staff to the late former President Muhammadu Buhari has narrated how members of the former president's cabal bypassed him to smuggle memos to the former president. Professor Ibrahim Gambari, who spoke on a television program, said the cabal knew Buhari's weak moment. He said they knew when to smuggle memos because they knew him as they interacted with him informally. Gambari, a former United Nations Special Envoy, was Buhari's chief of staff from May 13, 2020 to May 29, 2023. He was appointed shortly after the death of Abba Kyari, who occupied the role till his passing. In his reflections on his time with the former president who died on July 13, 2025, Gambari said Buhari loved his appointees just as he loved Nigerians, and that accounted for why he was reluctant to sack members of his cabinet despite overwhelming calls in that direction. The acting national chairman of the People's Democratic Party, Umar Damagum, has reacted to the resignation of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar from the party, saying the PDP will be stronger without Atiku. 2 days ago, Atiku resigned from the PDP, citing the party's deviation from its founding principles. Prior to his resignation, Atiku was part of those who assembled to form the opposition coalition that adopted the African Democratic Congress, ADC. Speaking to newsmen in Bauchi State, the PDP acting national chairman said this is not the first time that Atiku would dump the PDP for other political parties. Damagun said the current resignation was in line with his past actions, stressing that PDP is accustomed to such. He also insisted that Atiku's resignation and actions pose no significant threat. The Labour Party's statutory National Executive Committee has elected Senator Usman Nenadi as the interim national chairman and Senator Darlington Mokocha as the interim national secretary, among others, as members of the party's interim working committee. Nenadi was elected today during the party's NEC meeting in Abuja. The interim working committee is expected to oversee all party activities till the party's convention when elections for a new NEC would be conducted. Other resolutions reached during the meeting include the approval of the schedule for the conduct of ward congresses, local government area congresses, state congresses, zonal congresses, and the national convention of the Labour Party. The National Secretariat of the party is mandated to publish the guidelines and timelines to ensure transparent and democratic elections at all levels. The federal government has issued an alert warning Nigerians of the outbreak of infectious diseases across the country. Issuing the warning today via its website, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention, NCDC, confirmed the widespread outbreak of cholera, dengue fever, mpox, diphtheria, and yellow fever. The Public Health Agency warned of serious public health risks if urgent action was not taken, arguing that the ongoing outbreaks required immediate national attention. Suspected cholera cases have been reported in 34 states, with Zamfara accounting for 32% of the total as of June 23 to 29, 2025. Other affected states include Bayelsa, Adamawa, Delta, Lagos, and Rivers. Caused by Vibrio cholera, cholera can lead to severe diarrhea, dehydration, and death if untreated. And moving on to the foreign scene, a Brazil Supreme Court judge says Brazil's former president Jair Bolsonaro must wear an electronic monitoring device as he awaits a verdict in his trial on charges of plotting a coup. Judge Alexandra Moraes, a Bolsonaro opponent who is overseeing the trial now in its final stages, said the far-right leader and his son Eduardo had incited hostile acts against Brazil. Bolsonaro is accused of seeking to stay in power by overturning the 2022 election won by his left-wing opponent, current President Luiz Lula da Silva. He lashed out at the monitoring device order, calling it a supreme humiliation. The case is an extraordinary reckoning for a country still haunted by a 2 decades-long military dictatorship that ended in 19 85. And in sports, COSA Next Gen is calling on all young footballers, including girls and boys between the ages of 6 to 11 years in Port Harcourt, to join a 2-day football tournament that is focused on identifying and nurturing the next generation of football stars in Nigeria. In a notice, the management of COSA Next Gen said the 2-day football tournament will hold from July 25 to 26, 2025 at 9 a.m. daily at the Joseph Yobo Mini Stadium, D-Line, Port Harcourt. According to the management, registration for the tournament ends on the 21st of July 2025. It also urged those interested to call or WhatsApp COSA Mobile on 0802 121 0860, 0802 121 0860 for the link to register. You may wish to know that COSA Next Gen is empowering young football talents across Africa, nurturing a passionate love for the game. To end the news, here's a summary of the major stories. The Rivers State government has reaffirmed its commitment to timely completion of health projects in the state. The Pharmacy Council of Nigeria shut down 618 drug outlets in Rivers and Bayelsa over illegal operations. You heard that President Bola Tinubu has appointed the son of Ibrahim Babangida as the chairman of the revamped Bank of Agriculture. And on the foreign scene, we told you that the Brazil Supreme Court has ordered former President Jair Bolsonaro to wear monitoring device as he awaits a verdict in his trial on charges of plotting a coup. And that's the news, as edited by Ifunanya Obemendukwe. For comments and inquiries, please call 0818-389-2850 or send your emails to news@todayfmlive.com. You can also read our stories on www.todayfmlive.com. I am Faustina Oputi. Good evening and thank you for listening.
Today's news, today's entertainment, today's sports, today's issues. Today on Today 95.1 FM, Port Harcourt.
Today 95.1 FM, where news meets insight, sports meets passion, and entertainment meets excellence. Expert analysis from seasoned professionals and our top analysts, informing, educating, and entertaining you. Your voice, your station. We are the voice of the people.
The station with the...
As the voice of the people, we make sure that no one misses out. On Today 95.1 FM, there's something for everyone.
Our tech show, because tech is new money. Our kids show, because we love the little ones.
Our Gospiration, because it's the moment of truth. Our High Life show, because high life is vintage.
Our sports show with the adrenaline. Our midnight show, because we care about your love life.
Our Nostalgia Drive, because old is gold. Our show for young people, because Gen Z code is on.
Our Pidgin Bit, because na Naija we dey. Our book review, because books are a mirror. Our big stories, because big things only.
Our health shows with seasoned health experts, because we care that you're healthy. Our eyewitness report, because we want to hear from you. Our reggae shows, because Rastafari. One love.
Hello and good evening once again. This is Today 95.1 FM Port Harcourt, Voice of the People. And it's time again for a rundown of the foreign news stories that made the headlines on the world today. I am Faustina Uputu. The headlines: Liberians to protest against injustice, against justice, jobs and accountability. Drone strikes oil fields in Iraq. Brazilian president slams Trump over threatening tariffs. U.S. White House confirms Trump is diagnosed with common vascular condition. Now the details. Hundreds of Liberians have flooded the streets of the capital, chanting "Enough is enough" and demanding accountability from President Joseph Boakai's government. The demonstration, led by opposition figure Mulba Molu, marks the most visible protest since Boakai, who took over office last year, promising reforms and better living conditions. The protesters carried signs and voiced frustrations over unmet campaign promises, job losses, and the government's failure to establish long-promised war crimes. One of the protest's central demands is justice for victims of Liberia's brutal civil wars. The protesters are calling for the creation of a war crimes tribunal to prosecute those responsible for atrocities committed between 1989 and 2003. Togolese voters have gotten to the polls for municipal elections that were seen as a test for leader Faure Gnassingbé, who has faced rare and deadly protests recently following a constitutional reform that could effectively keep him in power indefinitely. Polling stations were largely deserted in Togo's capital, Lomé, reflecting widespread voter apathy and fear following the crackdown on anti-government protests that left several people dead in June. The powerful rule has no official term limits, and he is eligible to be re-elected by Parliament indefinitely. Meanwhile, diaspora-based social media influencers and civil society groups had called for a boycott of the municipal elections, the first national vote organized since the constitutional reform. They also argued that the current electoral system lacks credibility and that the recent repression has silenced dissenting voices. Away from Africa to the rest of the world. In Iraq, the Serang field in Dohuk province, operated by US-based HKN Energy, was attacked just as the company signed a new investment deal with the Iraqi government. It was confirmed yesterday that days after the attack, smoke was still rising from an oil field in Iraq's Kurdish region. The Kurdish region's Ministry of Natural Resources also confirmed the Sarang explosion was caused by a drone following a similar strike on the Komala field in Erbil. The drones also targeted fields in Zako and Badre, causing damage but no reported injuries. No group has claimed responsibility, but the attacks have heightened tensions between Baghdad and Kurdish authorities, raising concerns about the region's energy security. Speaking on a recorded national statement, Lula da Silva has criticized the United States for what he called unacceptable blackmail following failed trade talks. He accused Donald Trump's government of making false claims about Brazil's trade practices and threatening national institutions. The president also condemned Brazilian politicians who support the U.S. stance, labeling them as traitors to the nation, and defended Brazil's commitment to peace, multilateralism, and the interests of its people. Donald Trump's move this time is overtly political, targeting the Brazilian Supreme Court trial of former President Jair Bolsonaro, an ally of his who was charged for his alleged role in trying to overturn his 2022 election laws. The court's prosecution of U.S.-based social media companies Failing to comply with local laws was also mentioned by Trump in a public letter as a reason to hike Brazil's trade tariffs. The White House has confirmed that President Donald Trump has been diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency, a common vascular condition often seen in older adults. The announcement followed concerns raised after Trump was seen with mild swelling in his lower legs and bruising on his hand. The White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, also said the condition was discovered during a recent medical checkup. A vascular surgeon at the University of Michigan, Dr. Andrea Obi, explained that the causes are multifactorial, adding that the treatments tend to be compression stockings and walking. The disclosure is notable as Trump has historically kept much of his health information private. Thabil Ndululi, an Eswatini government spokesperson, says 5 men deported by the U.S. to Eswatini are being held in solitary confinement indefinitely until they can be sent back to their home countries with the help of the UN. According to newsmen, the migrants are at the Matsafa Correctional Complex outside Mbabane, which includes Eswatini's top maximum security prison. However, Thabili Mdululi declined to identify the correctional facility where the 5 men are being held, citing security concerns. The U.S. has previously deported 8 men to South Sudan following the Supreme Court's removal of restrictions on sending individuals to nations where they lack connections. Additionally, the U.S. has sent hundreds of Venezuelans and others to Costa Rica, El Salvador, and Panama. Demonstrations have taken place at more than 1,600 locations around the United States in protest against Donald Trump's controversial policies. And the policies include mass deportations of immigrants and refugees and cuts to medical insurance, as well as the removal of other safety nets for impoverished people. The Good Trouble Lives on refrain that underscored the National Day of Action yesterday was inspired by the death of late Congressman and civil rights leader John Lewis. The organizers have called for peaceful protests to take place on the 5th anniversary of Lewis's death along streets, at courts and other public spaces in cities including Atlanta, New York, and Los Angeles. And also, pushback against Trump so far in his second term has centered on deportations and immigration enforcement tactics, as well as access to health care. At least 30 Palestinians have been killed since dawn across Gaza in Israeli attacks, medical sources said. In the latest killings, 3 people died in an Israeli attack on the Tufa neighborhood of eastern Gaza City, and 5 people were also killed in an Israeli air attack in Jabalia and Nazla, northern Gaza. And earlier today, an Israeli attack hit tents sheltering displaced Palestinians in Al-Mawasi, southern Gaza, previously designated a so-called safe zone, igniting a major fire and killing at least 5 people, including infants. The death toll also includes 7 people who were desperately seeking aid. Hani Mahmoud, a reporter, also added that the injured, including children, were transferred to Nasser Hospital. To Syria, where heavy fighting has flared up again between the Druze and Bedouin tribes in the restive southern Syrian province of Suada, as another ceasefire has collapsed a day after Syrian troops pulled out of the area. The resumption of clashes earlier today came as a result of the Syrian Ministry of Interior denying reports that government forces are being redeployed to the Druze majority governorate. The spokesperson said government forces were in a normal state of readiness and there had been no deployment to Suada so far. Israel, which carried out heavy air attacks on Sueda and the capital Damascus, had previously warned the Syrian government to withdraw from the north. Meanwhile, the Syria's government condemned the Israeli attacks as a violation of Syrian sovereignty and an attempt to sow division and chaos in the country. Moving on, dozens of demonstrators have gathered outside the United States Embassy in Malaysia's capital, Kuala Lumpur, to protest against the proposed appointment of pro-Israel conservative author and political commentator Nick Adams as the U.S. envoy. The protesters called on Malaysia's government to exercise its right under international norms to reject Adams' proposed appointment. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim told reporters that it was too early in the process to decide on Adams' appointment, but his government would give the matter due consideration. A memorandum of protest submitted by demonstrators to the U.S. Embassy in Kuala Lumpur asked Trump to reconsider his nomination. And members of Anwar's People's Justice Party, speaking to newsmen, added that an ambassador's task is to be the bridge between two countries and not someone who destroys that bridge. The state authorities have blamed the management of India's Royal Challengers Bengaluru cricket team for last month's deadly stampede during celebration for their first Indian Premier League title. Karnataka state authorities singled out the RCB, its partners, and the State Cricket Association for their mismanagement of the event. According to reporters, the organizers had not submitted a formal request for permission to be granted for the celebrations, and the team went ahead with its victory parade despite police rejecting RCB's request. The players were parading the trophy near the stadium a day after their win over Punjab Kings in the final in Ahmedabad when the stampede occurred. Snoop Dogg has become co-owner of English Championship side Swansea City in an unlikely alliance between the world of rap and football. The American star made a surprise appearance on the club's social media channels last week, modeling their new home jersey for the 2025-2026 season, and the club announced that he has become an investor. Snoop Dogg's Swansea involvement comes after American businessman Brett Cravat and Jason Cohen took over the club last November. Swansea will hope that Snoop Dogg can use his 100 million plus social media followers to boost the club's profile as they seek to return to the Premier League for the first time since they were relegated in 2018. Swansea's owners also said they want to generate greater revenue, which would allow them to invest more in new players under the profit and sustainability rules in British football. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has accepted U.S. accusations that Europe was doing too little to fund its own defense and security, but now believes they are on the same page. Merz was in the UK to boost defense ties with Germany as part of an historic friendship treaty that also aims to tackle irregular migration and promote youth exchanges. Russia's war with Ukraine has framed the early weeks of his chancellorship as the U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to impose 30% centipede tariffs on European Union exports from 1st August 2025. Friedrich Merz, in his first UK broadcast interview as Chancellor, said that he had met with Trump 3 times and they were on good speaking terms. He was also a vocal supporter of Ukraine on the campaign trail and visited Kyiv months before he took Germany's center-right Christian Democrats to victory in elections in February. That story from Germany concludes tonight's edition of The World Today, as produced by Oloma Nwosu of the News Department. But before we go, here's a summary of the stories that made the headlines. Liberians have protested against justice, jobs, and accountability. We told you that a drone has struck an oil field in Iraq. You heard that Brazilian president has slammed Trump over threatening tariffs. And finally, we told you that U.S. White House has confirmed that Trump was diagnosed with common vascular condition. Till same time next week, do have a lovely evening. Thank you so much for listening. I am Faustina Uputu.
Unleash the power of the airwaves with the ultimate radio experience. Tune in to Today 95.1 FM, the voice of the people. Don't just listen, immerse yourself.
That is 100% true.
Say no to the ordinary. Embrace the extraordinary, because we are the voice of the people. Voice of the people. Today, 95.1 FM.
Today, 95.1 FM.
BBC World Service. I'm Charles Gitonga in Nairobi with Focus on Africa. Over 450 civilians killed in recent attacks in Sudan's North Kordofan state. What's behind the surge in violence?
So whenever the RSF is trying to take up an area, we see a lot of uptick in killings against civilians. It's seen as a strategy or a weapon of war.
Facing an unemployment crisis, Lesotho declares a state of disaster.
That state of emergency of disaster, it was a call for the government to appeal to development partners to put more resources.
And we look at sinkholes in South Africa and their impact on people's lives.
A sinkhole in the east of Johannesburg has left 5 families actually displaced for almost 4 years now.
That's all on the BBC Tonight in Focus. First, the news.
BBC News, I'm John Shea. The European Union has agreed more sanctions against Russia over its war with Ukraine, targeting its financial and energy sectors. The price cap on Russian crude oil will be slashed to just over $47 per barrel. President Zelensky has hailed the measure as essential and timely. Here's Sophia Betitzer.
The reason why it's significant is that Russia really relies on exporting oil and gas as a form of revenue. And so Brussels is hoping that by sort of decreasing its reliance on Russian fossil fuels, it will weaken the Kremlin's ability to finance the war. Now, as to whether these sanctions will work, well, I think not in the short term. This is the 18th round of sanctions. Russia is still attacking Ukraine on a daily basis.
The Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the sanctions were illegal.
We have seen a consistent anti-Russian line from Europe. We have repeatedly said we consider such unilateral restrictions illegal and we will oppose them. At the same time, we have already gained some immunity from sanctions. We have adapted to life under those sanctions.
The British government has placed sanctions on Russian military intelligence units and individuals it accuses of spreading chaos and disorder instigated by the Kremlin. This includes sabotage, cyber attacks and disinformation. Danny Eberhard is our Europe regional editor.
The alleged Russian military intelligence officers are subject to travel bans and asset freezes if they have any in Britain. But this appears to be as much about public exposure as anything else. Britain accuses one GRU unit of involvement in one of the worst atrocities of the war in Ukraine, the bombing of a theatre in Mariupol sheltering civilians, in which hundreds died. Russia denies targeting civilians. Another unit allegedly focuses on West Africa. Britain says it generates social media material to further Kremlin goals.
Sectarian clashes between Bedouin tribes and Druze militia have renewed in the southern Syrian province of Sueda, a day after government forces withdrew under heavy bombardment from Israel. There are reports that the tribes are surrounding the city of Sueda from various sides. In one Druze village, video verified by the BBC shows Syrian Arab and Bedouin tribal fighters walking among burning buildings. Nearly 600 people have been killed since Sunday. The International Criminal Court has confirmed that a wanted Libyan war crime suspect has been arrested in Germany. Khalid Mohammed Ali al-Hishri, commonly known as al-Bouti, is accused of being in charge of a notorious prison for 5 years on behalf of a powerful Salafist militia based in Tripoli. World News from the BBC. The UN Refugee Agency has warned that 11 million displaced people are in danger of losing access to humanitarian assistance this year due to cuts in foreign donations. The US, Sweden, France and Japan have all announced sharp reductions in their contributions. Imogen Folks reports.
Among the things the Refugee Agency has already had to cut, food rations for people fleeing Sudan and funding to move refugees in dangerous border areas to more secure locations. Targeted for cutting, education for Rohingya children in Bangladesh, many of whom have spent their childhoods in refugee camps, and health services for refugees in Lebanon. The agency is also set to cut 3,500 jobs, a third of its global workforce.
Sicilian prosecutors have appealed to the Italian Supreme Court against the acquittal of the Deputy Prime Minister Matteo Salvini. He was cleared last year of kidnapping migrants in 2019 when, as Interior Minister, he ordered their boat to remain at sea. The prosecutors are appealing on the grounds that Mr Salvini, who's now Transport Minister, violated international rules on maritime rescue. Brazilian police have searched the home and party headquarters of the former right-wing president Jair Bolsonaro on the orders of a Supreme Court judge. Local media say Mr Bolsonaro has been ordered to wear an ankle bracelet to prevent him fleeing to the US and has been forbidden from contacting foreign diplomats or using social media. He is accused of plotting a coup to stop his successor, President Lula, from taking office, something he denies. A deportation flight has left Germany carrying 81 Afghans with criminal convictions. They're being returned to Kabul in only the second such flight since the Taliban returned to power. The German Interior Minister said they included some of the most serious criminals. BBC News.
Hello, I'm Charles Gitonga and here is what's coming up for you on this edition of Focus on Africa. We'll unpack the security situation in Sudan's North Kordofan region and why the attacks, reportedly by the Rapid Support Forces, are becoming increasingly brutal. In Lesotho, a biting unemployment crisis that has prompted the government to announce a national state of disaster.
I have graduated from the university in 2021 and since then I have not been able to land any job in Lesotho. And I have a CV of 5 pages. I have done everything, but nonetheless, I still don't have a job.
And we find out about sinkholes in South Africa. First, how large could they be?
The variation can be close to a meter, tens of meters, spanning to almost 100 to 150 meters. They can be as big as that.
It's Friday, July 18th. First, we go to Sudan. The central region of North Kordofan has become the latest flashpoint in the country's ongoing civil war. The paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, who've been fighting the Sudanese army for control of the country since April 2023, are being blamed for what could be one of the deadliest attacks on civilians so far. More than 450 people, including pregnant women and children, are reported to have been killed this past weekend. The attacks happened in a village called Shag al-Nom, and we are still learning more about what exactly took place there. To help us understand the latest, I spoke to Rose Njoroge. She is a senior journalist with BBC Monitoring and closely follows developments in Sudan.
So the latest fighting started in June. So the figures have been rising steadily. And as of today, we reported 465 deaths, including about 30 children. So this is in the latest fighting in the area, and it's linked to the Rapid Support Forces. So they are the ones being accused of committing killings and human rights violations in the area.
So who are these human rights groups that are making these accusations, and what kind of evidence do they have to back up the allegation?
Reports that I've seen from international media are saying that it's the emergency lawyers that are making these accusations. But today we also reported that the UNICEF has also made similar accusations, cautioning against attacks against civilians because that's a war crime. We have not seen any evidence or linking the RSF to the attacks. Often when the RSF is trying to take control of an area, we see a lot of uptick in killings against civilians. It's seen as a strategy or a weapon of war on their side.
Seeing as, not much evidence has been put on the table now, do we know whether in such areas there would be any presence of the Sudanese armed forces so that it can be said it's both sides of the war going at it?
It's actually not being controlled by either party. So the Sudan Armed Forces controls the south and central Kordofan state. They have been fighting to control North Kordofan. So both sides, the RSF and the Sudan Armed Forces. So yes, both sides could be committing war crimes. But most of the time, reports lean towards RSF committing crimes. And I guess it's because the Sudan army is well versed with rules of war. But they are also, in some instances, also accused of committing war crimes when they are fighting the RSF. And especially when they are trying to take areas they had lost control of.
The BBC's Rose Njoroge. The UN says more than 3,000 people have fled the violence and dozens more are still missing. Alan Boswell, director of Horn of Africa at Crisis Group, says the front lines of the war have shifted west to the Kordofans after the army took back control of the capital Khartoum earlier this year. It's a region with huge strategic importance in this conflict.
The center of the war, the main prize of the war for the first almost 2 years of it was Khartoum, the capital, central Sudan. But since the RSF got pushed out, that put the Kordofans very much in the crosshair. And the Kordofans sit between, the Nile rivers and central Sudan on one hand to the east and Darfur to the west. Kordofans become the new battleground in a sense. If the RSF is able to take control of most of Kordofan and hold that, then they hold, basically most of western Sudan west of the Nile, and they're also then within striking distance of central Sudan and continue to try to destabilize that area as well. Whereas if the Sudanese army is able to push through and push the RSF out of most of Kordofan, but also control the main roads, then they'd be in a position to possibly take the war into Darfur, into the RSF territory.
Right. And are both sides, and in this case the Sudan Armed Forces, are they fighting just as hard to maintain a grip of Kordofan?
Yes, both sides are throwing many of their fighters at it. These are both sides that rely on a wider coalition of fighters. So we've seen many of the same coalition of fighters, be that militias on the army side, including these ex-Darfur rebel groups who are now an important part of the Sudanese army coalition. These are the groups that were very important for the retaking of Khartoum, fighting on the Sudanese army side. So they've now shifted their fighting towards Kordofan, and then we've seen the RSF deploy more of its fighters from Darfur, but also call on other coalition and militia fighters and really try to stop the advance from the Sudanese army and all reverse momentum. I think both sides understand that a lot is at stake, and also the narrative of who is winning or not is also at stake. So they've devoted a lot. Also, a lot of Sudan right now is in the course of rainy season. Other parts of the country, it's harder to fight at right now. And we've seen quite a bit of heavy artillery also directed at these battles in West Kordofan as well.
And it also seems that the human cost of this fighting in North Kordofan is very, very high, with reports of up to 450 people recently massacred in villages in the area. What can you tell us about that?
We have seen atrocities like this committed repeatedly during the Sudanese civil war so far, many of them at the hands of the RSF. We've also seen the Sudanese army, continue to bomb quite indiscriminately civilian areas as well and commit, it looked like atrocities on that end as well. So we'll see how the investigations turn out on that.
So, Alan, as things stand now, especially North Kordofan, what does all this tell us about where this war is heading?
I think there was some sense after the Sudanese army took Khartoum from some that maybe it's such a massive victory, which it was a huge victory to retake the capital, that it would signal something of the beginning of the end of the conflict, and that hasn't proven true. We've seen the Sudanese army offensive stall at a minimum in Kordofan for now. Momentum could start to reverse again, and we're seeing still very heavy fighting. Two broader coalitions in Sudan are really waging it out on the battlefield, and they're, of course, receiving ample support from outside powers in the region on both sides. And we continue to see both sides get more and more heavier equipment, more and more sophisticated equipment, and it does not look like a war that's going to end anytime soon or on its own. The war itself is very unpredictable.
If you could just remind us who are these external actors that are supporting both sides of the war.
The Sudanese army has support from a wide variety of countries, most of whom recognize it also as the government in Sudan. So be that Egypt, be that Turkey, Algeria, Iran at some points. It has close relations with Qatar and Saudi Arabia. I mean, the RSF's main patron is the United Arab Emirates. And the RSF also has friendly ties with quite a number of African countries as well in the neighborhood. This is a war that's really pitting these regional powers increasingly against each other, and it's put Sudan very much at the crosshairs.
Alan Boswell from Crisis Group. Lesotho, a small country surrounded by South Africa, is facing a serious crisis because many of its young people can't find jobs.
I have graduated from the university in 2021, and since then I have not been able to land any job in Lesotho. And I have a CV of 5 pages. I have done everything, but nonetheless, I still don't have a job.
The government says things are so bad, they've officially declared a national state of disaster that will last until mid-2027. Focus on Africa TV's Wahiga Mwaura spoke to Lesotho's Minister of Trade, Industry, Business Development and Tourism, Moketi Shelile, who began by explaining the reasons behind the declaration of a state of disaster.
We have had a lot of many years of neglect in terms of generating jobs, especially for the youth. At the moment, we have a youth unemployment that is higher than the national average. So there are a particular segment of society that needs to be supported. And this is the reason behind our national state of emergency.
So you have now announced that under this national state of disaster, that government ministries will allocate 2% of their budgets to job creation programs. What are these job creation programs?
We have quite a number of them that are targeted to the youth. We have what we call Sibabato. It's one of those projects that we are helping the youth with entrepreneurship development and incubation and acceleration and so on. We have another project that we call Entrepreneurship Hub and Seed Financing, which also is helping different types of businesses that is focusing mainly on youth and women. So this money that we are trying to secure from different ministries is going to go into those programs.
I mean, your critics would ask, was job creation not prioritized earlier, that you've allowed the situation to get out of hand? How do you respond?
Our government is 2.5 years old, and we came in with a promise to change things in a way that no other government has done before. And this is what exactly we are trying to do. We are trying to redress the imbalances that have compounded maybe over around 20 years or so.
That was Lesotho's Minister of Trade, Industry, Business Development and Tourism, Moketi Shelile, speaking to my colleague, Wahiga Mwaura. Now, Lesotho has lived through tough economic times lately, and the April announcement by the US to impose a 50% import tariff on its products only made things worse. That tax has been suspended for now. Overall, about 3 out of every 10 people in Lesotho are unemployed. But when it comes to young people, it's even worse, with almost 1 out of every 2 being jobless. Tabo Kesi is the Chief Executive Officer of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho. How did the country get to this point?
It started with COVID, but prior to COVID, we were already having a drought which have affected our agricultural productivity. Then we had the new U.S. reciprocal tariff, which have negatively affected our textile and apparel industry. This is what has put Lesotho where it is now, that we are having high rate of unemployment.
So some wonder whether there are policies or leadership failures, one would call them, that may have contributed to this crisis because, I mean, it's 5 years since COVID. You know, some of these problems, we've lived with them for quite a minute. Are there some policies that didn't quite work?
I think the major weakness on the side of the government was a slow implementation of the national reforms, because amongst the reforms, we're having economic reforms. So with the new government taking time to implement some of the reforms, that has already compromised the country, because most development partners were committed to assist the government of Lesotho to implement the national reforms. So we took a long time to pass omnibus bill, and which discouraged other potential development partners, you know, to put more resources to the government of Lesotho. Because I know the partner like the European Union, which committed to assist the implementation of the national reforms agenda, they had to suspend the support because they said they can't see a progress. I think that this is where the major challenge emanates from.
Let's look back at the U.S. tariffs. So following the proposal by President Trump for 50% tariff on all goods coming from Lesotho, what did that mean for jobs when you could export without these jitters and fears of tariffs?
It means one thing. We are going to have a catastrophe in the sense that at peak, the textile and apparel industry used to employ around 55,000 at peak. But recently, it has gone down to 34,000. So these are the direct jobs. And in the small economy like Lesotho, we are having a lot of indirect jobs created by this textile and apparel sector. You can talk of public transport, retail, financial services. So if that industry collapsed, so it means other sectors are going to be negatively affected. So we are already experiencing affected sectors like residential, because the factory workers used to hire property. Now, because some factories have shut down, they had to vacate and go back to their rural homes. So we can see negative impact now that we are really feeling even before the 1st August, because we realize that the U.S. government has extended the grace period of 3 months till the 1st August. But we can see the negative impact.
What do you think of the state of disaster that the government has declared?
I think that state of emergency of disaster, it was a call for the government to appeal to development partners to put more resources. I think that was the message.
And since you're the CEO of the Private Sector Foundation, Thabo, I have to ask you what the private sector is doing about this to bring more jobs to the country.
Frankly speaking, the private sector is also having some difficulties. As you know, emerging economies like Lesotho, you find that the government is the big buyer. Most private businesses are doing business with the government, and the government is delaying to pay the suppliers, which is negatively affecting the cash flow of most businesses, compromising the potential of the private sector, you know, to create job opportunities.
Thabo Casey, an economic analyst and the chief executive officer of the Private Sector Foundation of Lesotho. Have you ever seen a sinkhole near where you live? The ground is torn apart and it swallows everything in its sight. Well, the phenomenon occurs across the world but appears to happen quite often in South Africa, particularly in Gauteng province. The city of Johannesburg is said to be pockmarked with sinkholes. More than a dozen are recorded each year, and reports show it has experienced more than 2,000 sinkholes since 1960. The sinkholes have resulted in at least a dozen or so deaths and caused over $130 million worth of damage. In one of the most recent cases, about 2 months ago, there were reports of Centurion, a vast area between Pretoria and Midrand, facing a sinkhole crisis, and calls are growing for the situation to be declared a national state of disaster. To tell us more, here is Michelle Banda from the Sowetan newspaper in South Africa.
A sinkhole in the east of Johannesburg in a place called Katlehong has left 5 families actually displaced for almost 4 years now. This is after their homes were demolished because the sinkhole had ate down the foundation of their homes, leaving them floating and cracking, because they tell me that what started as a small hole that had water coming out would grow bigger and bigger every time they checked. And little did they know that it was actually curving downwards and had formed a curve underneath the foundation of their homes, causing cracks to their walls, and also the structural integrity of the homes was not now stable as a result. And over time, they'd call in the municipality to come and assess what was happening. And for them, it wasn't about a sinkhole. They didn't know what it was, but it was a problem because they're seeing the visible cracks and the water coming out, which was unexplainable, because when they looked, nothing was leaking, but apparently a pipe had been leaking all the way downwards and had been forming like a water dam underneath and curving away the entire foundation, which now resulted in this so-called sinkhole. The integrity of their homes became unstable, and then the city had to relocate those families to temporary locations until this matter was resolved. But almost 4 years later, the families are still in temporary locations and their homes not yet built. But that is another issue between the city and its contractors.
Dr. James Jenner is from the Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth. What exactly is a sinkhole?
A sinkhole that is created underneath the surface or underneath the ground. It is created as a result of water, mainly sweeping or eroding some material. So when that happens, a space is created underground, which tends to swallow the material on the surface, and a hole is left on the ground as we can see it.
So if you're living on the surface of the earth, as we all do, what you will see is a huge hole on the ground. So how big or small can they be?
The variation can be close to a meter, tens of meters, spanning to almost 100 to 150 meters. They can be as big as that.
That's quite big. I do understand that they do occur quite a lot in Johannesburg, in the province of Gauteng.
So that's mainly a function of 2 things that I can attribute to that. The first is the nature of the material under which the area around Johannesburg is laid upon, which is mainly what we call dolomite rock, or kind of some limestone rock. So this kind of rock easily dissolves with time and leaves these caves underneath the surface, and hence these many sinkholes. The other reason is the mining activities around areas in Johannesburg, which also results in these human activities, leading to the collapse of the material, or the swallowing of the material from underneath the surface. So those are the main reasons why we have such problems with sinkholes. Yes.
And is this happening in other parts of South Africa as well?
Yes, it is happening in other parts of South Africa. They are quite distributed around many provinces in South Africa. But for those reported within South Africa, 98% of them or more are actually found in the Gauteng province. So the other provinces would have different types of sinkholes, which are a result of probably burst water pipes and other human activities like mining and the like. But the dolomite type is in the Gauteng province.
So how damaging can this be, especially if it's a big one?
It's quite serious damages that can result in some economic losses, and also can be fatal, because they can be as big, such as to swallow a whole house or a complete building. So that can be costly in terms of when we talk in monetary terms, but in as much it is also fatal, that can be costly to human life.
I wonder if some of those cases have happened in South Africa in the recent past, where people have lost lives or buildings have been swallowed, key infrastructure has been destroyed.
Yes, there are some reported cases of buildings that have collapsed. We reported, I think, as far back as in the 1960s, an area around a mining area. The houses for the miners there were simply swallowed, and some lives.
Dr. Jenner, you did your PhD research on sinkholes. Could you tell us how you decided on that and why, and even what you found in the course of doing this research.
I saw a gap which is basically based on the fact that we have optic fiber which is buried underground in most areas around the country. So this optic fiber, besides being used for communication, the way in which we communicate and get our internet, we saw that we can use it as a sensor, and my research now was to try and find means of having this optic fiber be able to detect at least something that happens around the environment where it is embedded. And as such, my research on finding what kind of geohazards or land problems can this fiber detect through the areas where it is passing through.
Dr. James Jenner from the Nelson Mandela University. Focus on Africa was produced by Richard Kagoy here in Nairobi, Blessing Aderuba in Lagos, and Sunita Naha in London. Paul Bachibinga was the senior producer in charge. Gabriel O'Regan was the technical producer. Andrea Lombard and Alice Mudengi are our editors. I'm Charles Gitonga. Thanks for listening.
Talk radio. I listen to a lot of talk radio.
95.1 FM. Say no to the ordinary. Embrace the extraordinary, because we are the voice of the people. Voice of the people. Today, 95.1 FM.
Today, 95.1.
You may not realize it, but do you know you can always show your love for others with simple gestures? Here are some of them. Always look for the good in people. There are two sides to every story. We have our good and bad sides. So, look for the good in people. Focus on people's potential. Everyone has potential. So, rather than put them down, help them realize it. Choose to love. If you're given an option between giving love and receiving love, choose giving because that is a more practical choice. Treat everyone as equals. This means letting go of all the prejudice and partiality. See people for who they really are, not their jobs, not their apparels or bank accounts. If everyone does this, then the world would be a better place. Love yourself. You cannot give what you don't have. So, before you try to love other people, love yourself first. Forgive. We all make mistakes. So, whether it's a family or a stranger, the best way of showing love is forgiveness. Everyone deserves a second chance. Show compassion. Care for other people. Care for what they are going through. Do what you can to help. Give back to the community. Remember that a single drop of water can cause countless ripples. That donation, no matter how small, can inspire others to do the same. Smile, even to strangers. Remember that you're never fully dressed without a smile. So, do not underestimate the power of a smile. Not only does it lighten up your face, it will also brighten up another person's day. Be the spark of positivity you want to see. When you smile, the whole world smiles with you. This message is brought to you by Today 95.1 FM, the voice of the people.